And we're on. We're on. Just like every week, I say we're on, you make a gesture, and then I laugh. And that's how
that's how we do it. We should start it like we finished a joke. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, yeah, that's the joke in itself. I guess I'm the joke. Hey, by the way, I didn't have a chance to shower and take care of my hair and stuff today, so I'm wearing a hat.
Sam, you look like a vibe. What goes into your outfit selections usually?
Yeah, well, life is complicated, man. It's complicated. There's too much going on.
Well, it looks good. It's fresh. It's fresh.
All right, listen, man. Okay, so what do we got? Elijah, did you watch Class yesterday?
I didn't see Class yesterday, unfortunately.
All right. It was good. It was a good class. I mean, it was it was a really very interesting class. A class that I wanted to do for a long time, and I have to say I was a little bit surprised. We looked at we had a conversation with 4 conservative students who identify as conservative and like legit conservative. You know, like sometimes I'll ask students, hey, could it be really nice to have somebody, I have a question for someone who's conservative, you know, or whatever. They'll come up, maybe they'll sit down, whatever the case is, and they'll start talking and they'll be like, well, I'm economically conservative. But like on every other issue, they're not at all conservative, you know. And I'm like, everyone's economically conservative. Like nobody wants to give the government half your paycheck, and you know, have people spend the money wherever they want to spend it, and you know, that kind of thing, waste money, you know, that sort of thing. Everybody wants low taxes. I mean, everyone is economically conservative.
Okay.
So it's about the other issues. But anyway, these students were, you know, they were really thoughtfully conservative. Yeah. So,
but one of them was economically conservative, and then you dug.
They were all economically conservative, but they were also conservative in the other ways that people would say are conservative, whatever that means. I mean, it means so many different things, and that's part of the problem. You know, like we're going to put people in. You know, I mean, we can't have a conversation if we don't put people in some boxes. You know, so I'm putting them in boxes by saying, hey, let's have a conversation with these 4 conservative students. But like, what does that mean, man? So really, but we did anyway.
So was it only conservative students that were up in class yesterday?
No, well, there were just 4, but there's a lot of conservative students in class. Yeah, I talked to
just like at the front of class.
Yeah, in the front. Yeah, in the front. Yeah. A lot of people applied. A lot of people were interested, and you know, I just really kind of had to just pick a few out. And,
so was the point of the class yesterday to kind of dive into the perspective of a student that positions themselves as conservative or Republican?
Yeah. Well, the issue, you know, it's sort of, in a way, it goes back to the second class, maybe when we talked about MAGA, or maybe it was when we did Charlie Kirk. I'm not really sure, but I said, hey, can I just I have a question for a conservative student. Like, who's conservative here? Like, can I just? Nobody raised their hand. I didn't give it very long. Like, I know that in order for someone to raise their hand, unless it's something really simple, I need to give them more than 7 seconds, you know. But what I realized in that moment was like, oh man, I don't want to. I don't really need to ask someone that question. I didn't like kind of draw it out. I would have had people raise their hands. But in any case, what it looked like on video to people watching was that conservative students don't want to raise their hands, you know? And I'm like, nah, that's not it, man. But nonetheless, let's have that conversation, because that's the perception on the outside of the academy, you know, that conservative students are beaten down and they're afraid. And first off, there are very few of them. And then secondly, they're beaten down and they're afraid, or I don't mean beaten down, but you know what I mean, right? They're like,
Yeah, this is that's super interesting just because when Laurie and I were having a debrief for Red Blue Dialogue, it was like the complexity like of the landscape is so interesting because the administration is Republican, right?
yeah,
But then how she was breaking it down is like the narrative or the majority is very much blue, or like the dominant narratives that try to get pushed, or like these blue narratives. But people that are Republican, they feel like the minority, because they feel
yeah,
like they have to be silenced, or that they can't speak up because of the pushback that they'll receive, or like and even though like the administration, the administration right now is conservative or
yeah,
Republican, but like the civilians that stand for that don't feel like the empowered feeling
yeah,
that maybe
yeah.
they would feel if your majority was in the administration, or if
Yeah, like,
your side
yeah,
was on the administration. But
yeah,
because
yeah.
of, I don't know, it was just super interesting how um, I'm not saying it as eloquently at all as she was saying it, but it was really interesting. I'm not sure where you're
Well,
getting from that, but
yeah, it is kind of interesting that the perception is that the public discourse is in most social spaces is left leaning. It's
yeah,
more linked to anti-racism, anti-sexism, support for LGBT rights, support for immigrants, support for ending things like homelessness and poverty, and like things that require government funding and that kind of thing. Quite
mhm.
support for gun control, even though people have a very much a misperception about these things, but nonetheless, that is the perception by many people that the
Mhm.
public discourse that we have in media, and the media is run by people who lean far left, and that kind of thing.
Right,
Schools,
which,
universities, yeah,
and so like going full circle, relating that back to class yesterday, and the assumption of whether or not students are raising their hand because raising their hand or not raising their hand
you're
because
not
they
raising their hand. Yeah,
align with the conservative perspective.
yeah,
Yeah.
aligning with the perspective that students at universities are really silenced, right? Conservative students. So anyway,
Right.
I said, well, let's ask them, So we did this class with 4 conservative students, to say like, what's your experience, And I was surprised, actually, a little bit. All of them, and they had a lot of experience. 2 were seniors, one was a junior. I think 2 were seniors, or one was a senior, 2 were juniors, and the other was as a transfer student who's a junior, right? Which means they've had a lot of experience in the classroom.
Hmm.
And they overwhelmingly said that they don't feel shut down really, and they don't feel that they can really assess very clearly where most of their professors come from, well, like what the ideology of their professors is.
They feel like they can't assess.
No, they can't really tell. It's not clear. Sometimes, in certain classes, professor an instructor will throw out certain words, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then you kind of know, okay,
Right.
that person they're going to be on the left, because somebody
It's
on
like a
the
little
right.
window.
Yeah, the one
Mhm.
guy gave an example of like dead names, right? Like for people who transition, who are trans, and they transition and they change their name, and so the idea of dead name, that's not something that, if you weren't in that world, I had never heard of dead names.
Neither.
Like,
This is my first
yeah,
time hearing it,
yeah,
actually.
Lori, I talked with Lori about it, and she's like, no, dude, that's a thing. And I'm like, how do I not know that? Because I'm very much connected to the trans community. I mean, I'm very aware, and Jeff and I, we've
Right.
done, and Nisha, we've done a number of classes on trans issues. But in any case, right,
Mhm.
So that's sort of like it's signaling, right? It would be signaling to me if I heard somebody say that. I'd be like, okay, so you're really knowledgeable about X, Y, or Z issue, or whatever the case
Wait,
is.
if you heard them say dead name?
Yeah, or like if someone uses the word queer, like, I'll talk about the queer community. Well, like I'm not going to say queer if I'm not connected to the queer community. If I'm feel any animosity toward the LGBT community, if I meet someone who feels animosity toward the LGBT community, they are never going to use the word queer in a public space. I mean, it's just not. They're going to know.
They would use a different word. You're saying they would use something different?
Yeah, they would say the homosexual community, or they might say the lesbian, gay, bisexual, or LGBT community. They might say that, but
Because
they would
it's
never
more
say
socially
queer.
passing than queer.
They would, because they don't want to be, people don't want to be.
Yeah.
First off, it's not that they don't want to be outed as being bigoted. But most people want to be respectful. Most human beings want to be respectful. It doesn't really matter who you are. Like, it's like somebody might go to a protest about ICE, let's say, right? And then while they're at the protest, they're shouting all these things. Like in Chicago right now, I was listening to this. I was watching this short video of these people that were protesting in Chicago yesterday, and they were shouting all these things toward these ICE people, right? And who were, in the streets, walking down the streets. I don't know, but okay, if you're there, you can, and they were pretty disrespectful things. Although I understand, like the point of being at this protest is to yell stuff. I mean, that's how it works, right? And so there were also people that were pro-ICE that were yelling at the anti-ICE people, and the point of being at the protest against the anti-ICE people would be to yell, to say stuff. You know what I mean? So there's a certain amount of disrespect, but when people come together, in an environment like that that's not politically charged, people will be respectful. So if you have animosity, Elijah, toward the LGBT community, and you're in a public space and you're talking somewhere, you're not going to use the word queer because you don't feel the only connection you're going to have to that word is going to be a negative connection, that it's a term that bigots use. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, well, my queer friends want me to say queer, and so I say queer. Like, you're not going to do that because you're not in that space, right? So, anyway, so one of the students were talking about that, about sometimes they can sort of assess where their professors are from because of certain words that they use, but the professors aren't trying to signal that; they're just saying it,
And it's really interesting to think that some people are using words. Some people just aren't updated on what the new thing is that's the most respectful. And then people might either, I guess, maybe be silent out of respect, and then people think silence means something else than like them being respectful, because they're like, oh, I don't know what to say. I'm just gonna not say anything at all. But then there's like, I actually have this shirt that I bought it's like a very powerful statement. This one artist, he made these shirts for Black Lives Matter, right? And it said on the front of the shirt, it says, white silence is like pro-racism, or like speak up, because like if you're silent, then you have a position, then you're not taking advantage of your power to say something. So you're silent. But like that's really interesting how like people could be silent to be respectful, but then silence to other people could mean like something else. But anyway,
exactly. Yeah, because white silence is that, because like, no, it's not. White silence is complicity, or complicity to what?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I've seen those shirts. Yeah. So and if you wear that shirt somewhere, people are gonna immediately size you up and be like, okay. So I think that students were pretty clear that sometimes they can kind of tell, but not often, man. They don't know what their professors are thinking, or they don't know if they're conservative or liberal.
And,
Most often, man.
right.
So it goes against.
And,
So what they were saying absolutely goes against the narrative that, you know, those of us, our professors at universities, are jamming our ideologies down the throats of our students. Now, but of course I knew that.
and like you're also saying that students wouldn't know to feel uncomfortable around certain professors because they don't know where the professors stand. So like, how would they
that's
know
right.
what was acceptable to that professor or not?
There's no discomfort because they don't know, you know.
And were you also saying about the term queer? Were you saying that if you're a part of the in group, you know that word to be neutral or as a sign of like that you're in the group if you use that? Is that what you were saying about that?
We didn't talk about that yesterday, but that was just an add-on today for me.
I was just curious if that word
but did they we didn't really get into that, like which words and stuff, but that's a really good question. But the other thing is what they said, but I knew that wasn't but I know that first off, what they said yesterday is what I most often hear from conservative students. And even the most conservative students. I mean, the ones who, you know, the person that is the head of Turning Point USA, who at Penn State, you know, the person who is the president of the college Republicans or whatever, right? I mean, over the years, all these students, I've had them in my class. I mean, they take my class, you know, and so I always ask them that question, like, hey, what do you what's your experience? And they're always like, oh, no, it's great. You know, I'm like, I don't have anything. Once in a while, a student will say, oh yeah, I had this professor who was really annoying and used to make fun of me, or whatever the case was, right? Or I felt they were judging me or treating me in a negative way, or once in a while, but it's not common. But I knew that there were other students in the classroom who certainly had a different experience. So we opened it up, and two different students spoke, and they say, I've had the, you know, they took the mic in the room, right, and said, like, I've had the experience where I had a couple professors who I felt I could really size them up, and they were left or whatever, right? But I've had students also size their conservative students up, you know, and our conservative professors, and be like, hey, yeah, man, I had this professor who's really right wing, man, and he used to like always be like pushing that idea in the classroom, but this there are several professors who I know who are like that, but a lot of times the liberal students, they come to appreciate that. Well, sometimes they don't, because they don't really understand what a gift that is. But I'm like, dude, enjoy that experience. Like, you get to hear, where else are you going to hear somebody make these really conservative arguments, you know, because you're not going to get it on your TikTok or, you know, on your Facebook feed. So like, appreciate it. And then it's a professor, so use that. Like, you're getting a good conservative argument here. You know what I mean? Like that, you need to have that. Who knows? Anyway, so there were a couple of students in class who said, like, I've had the experience where, I've had some leftist students. Well, the one guy, and then I talked to him after class, he's like an English literature major. And I'm like, bro, there's not an English literature professor anywhere in the country that's conservative, man. Okay, so and he said, like, I know, man. That's the nature of it, right?
Right.
So, that's pretty funny.
And so most of these universities, most students at university that are navigating at Penn State, or at least conservative students, are saying that they feel they don't feel like their position would be in any way like attacked or
they don't feel like that.
And that's like before they express their views, or
just once they're in the class, like, you know,
just navigating the landscape mostly, but not exactly.
It's just a different landscape. The one guy who volunteered yesterday, he went to a really left liberal high school in Miami, right? He's, I think, what do you say? Argentinian, Paraguayan Jew from Miami. Well, I think his father is Italian, but on his mother's side, she's Argentinian, Paraguayan, I think. So he speaks Spanish. Anyway, he went to this really left high school. So he's like, all right, well, whatever. I'm going to get to college and then I'm going to experience the same thing, because he just assumed that. And he got here and realized, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't left at all. Certainly not converted to my high school. But he also said, yeah, he didn't find much. He just doesn't find he finds his professors being quite open. Yeah, quite open. And, in fairness, and this, think back to your undergraduate days. What are most of your classes? Like, you got to take your writing, your science classes, your this, your that. I mean, you're doing all these classes that really don't have a lot to do with politics anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So
Unless you're like in those Gen Ed courses where it starts to talk about the
or like
social
in my
world a little
class,
bit, Yeah, exactly.
But most are not. You're going to take like intro to psychology as a general education class, and you're just going to get psychology, man. And maybe one day the professor makes this offhanded comment about Trump's state of mental health, given how he wears his hair or whatever, makes a joke out of that. And you're like, oh,
I see where you're at.
But mostly, but even that, like, it's like, hey, you don't know. You really don't. You just don't know, right? So for me, I'm always making comment. Whoever's in power.
I was about to say that, like, you would do that, but
yeah, go back to my 8 years of Obama. I had fun with Obama, man. I had so many jokes lined up constantly, man, and things about Obama and saying stuff. I was like, listen, there we go, right? So, I mean, but you don't get, you don't hear that. And before Obama, it was 8 years of George Bush, right? So then people who were, left and Democrats and supported Obama, they're like, hey, you're talking about Obama. But for the past 8 years, I was talking about Bush, so like, that's the problem. It's sort of one after the other. But
I wonder what students, like what places do harbor that fear, of like, I'm this position and I'm kind of afraid to be on campus because of that.
Yeah.
Or like what areas exist that are like that,
Well,
if it's not Penn State, if we're not hearing it from like Penn State students.
Let's say you went to like Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. It's a very conservative school. It's a small kind of Christian school. I mean, I say kind of, it is a Christian school, but it's not a Christian school like a Bible school. It's a liberal arts school. It's, really rooted in the liberal arts not the liberal arts, the liberal arts, like free thinking and,
right.
And, Hillsdale, if you go there and you're left, you're going to feel a little bit alienated. You're going to struggle. Like most of the professors are going to come from more of a conservative perspective. And you're not going to struggle. You're probably going to be fine. But you're going to be fine just like more conservative students are fine at most universities. But listen, there are some, remember the conversation we had with Peter Boghossian, and he was at Portland State, man. Portland State is far left, man. That's a very different story if you're a conservative student. So, but the idea is that all these universities are a certain way. And I think that's what we heard from students yesterday as well. It may be the case, but it's certainly not the case at Penn State. So
that's so interesting. There was this so I'm taking the grad course for RJI, and we had our second session this morning, and one of the things that they were talking about, which is a part of this article, was the idea of like dominant discourse, secondary discourse, and like powerful. I think he used the term powerful discourse, but and like how big D for discourse is like the overall identity and of like a society or a community, and then like the little d for discourse. There's like big D discourse and little d discourse, and little d discourse is like the explicit language that's used that relates to the dominant identity and the main. And so that's so interesting to think about, like when thinking about university and like the dominant discourse at Penn State, or like the dominant discourse over at the one university you were just talking about, and how people Hillsdale and how people navigate, how individuals navigate within a discourse that might be, different, or like what are they hearing, or what are the small cues or signals that people are getting, like, oh, this is vastly different from me, or this discourse is something I don't relate to.
Yeah.
It's just something from class today that's making me
like
think
how
about it.
like how quickly you pick it up.
Yeah.
I have students who are really, they don't seem like they're politically aligned. They're not thinking about political things. They're definitely not left. And they will refer to themselves as like cisgendered. I'm like, what? It's like, what? That's a thing, man. You say cisgender. It's like, wait, it's like, wait, what do you, yeah. But, and by the way, cisgender just simply means that you are the gender that you were ascribed at birth. So I'm cisgendered male. I'm born as a boy. I grow up as a boy. I identify as a boy. I'm straight, and there are no changes. I'm not, balancing anything. I am cisgender.
Right.
But I'm like, well, that's 99.9% of the population, So when I hear somebody say that, I'm like, well, yeah,
You assume that they would they're aligning with a certain, like,
but they've aligned.
Ideology.
They've learned to say, well, I'll identify that way. So, I'm an American. I'm a man. I'm white. I'm cisgender. It's like, so that's the thing with like the discourse that you're talking about, and like, okay, so for this generation, so 30 years from now, I doubt we'll still be using cisgendered at all 30 years from now, but if we are, that'll just be kind of a thing that nobody will think twice about, So,
and usually if someone is saying they're cisgender, that's like, if a professor was like, hey, I'm cisgender, a student would be able to say, like, oh, this person probably leans very left because they said they were.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not like a right-wing thing to do, right?
But if one of my students said it, though, I wouldn't know that they're left. That's the thing, because everybody left, right, and center has kind of started to pick that up over the past 10 years. Yeah, they've really adopted it. But somebody my age, when I see that with my colleagues or something, like they'll have on their, so you see my name on my screen. I don't know what my name says. Well, it doesn't say anything. It doesn't look like, but in my Zoom screen, it just has my name. It doesn't say he, him, I'm like, you don't need my pronouns, man. Like, I don't, like I appreciate that. I see that. It's good. It's whatever it is, but like, I'm not putting my pronouns up. I'm not doing that. And I never do that, but it's fine, but
right.
But if someone my age puts their pronouns up, it's either because they're not really engaged in the deeper conversation, so they put it up because they think, oh, I should put this up. It's like, no, you shouldn't put it. You don't need to put that up. You don't need to put those pronouns up on your Zoom name, your Zoom screen, right? You really don't need to. But, if you want to be, if you have the idea that, well, but people who are they and them, who identify as they and them, well, that's good for people to know. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that are good, like Anyway, okay, so I want to finish up. So that was class yesterday. It was good. I thought it was a really good class. I thought it was thoughtful. It was really interesting. I was a little bit concerned that because they were all saying like, hey, I don't really experience a lot of, I don't experience really any discrimination or any problems because I'm conservative, when in fact the whole world is telling them that they do. This is like, I get emails every day, thank you for being one of the only professors out there that are trying to be true to your field and challenge all students and not impose your leftist ideology and so on, right? I get emails every single day. I've got 4 of them today thanking me for that, right? Which is like, okay. But what these students were saying is like, hey, the 4 people that sent me emails today, they would tell them, hey, well, actually, you're incorrect because Sam is one of every professor I've had at Penn State has been more like Sam, has been very much just like Sam, thoughtful, not imposing his ideology and so on.
Right.
The thing is, they don't have cameras in their room, so people can't see it in that way. So, but my concern was that people would think I lined that all up. I set it up to have just these students there, so they would tell that narrative. And in fact, it wasn't the case at all, man. Anyways, that was
cool. Thought is, do you think that gets less and less true once you start to leave like university spaces, like people feeling pretty safe for the position that they keep? Like, because there's so many, even though like there might be percentages of like higher, you said generally it's like 50-50, right? Like in your class, 50% would be red, 50% would be blue.
No,
I think you said something like that, or you said it would be like
no. It
35.
still leans blue. Like it's like 25. Here are the numbers. The last time we did them, which was last year, I did it. 30% blue, 25% red. So it's a little more blue than red, and then 45% are basically just like whatever, moderate. I'm I'm moderate. I'm somewhere in the middle. I have some conservative ideas, some liberal ideas, and and they probably, of those in the middle, if I had to guess, I would say you probably lean left. You definitely, majority of you lean left instead of lean right. Even though you're moderate, you tend to lean left.
Right.
Is what I would say. But,
Right.
And so, and I'm not saying that there isn't. There is, even in a place like Penn State. I mean, there is.
But there's not people that don't feel safe or
like
feel
it's people discriminating. It's a problem. Conservative student group. We talked about how the people who are in these conservative student groups, and there aren't that many of them, by the way, but then there aren't that many really left groups either. It's just that when students want to do something, like say the sociology club, okay, we used to have a soc club for soc majors, they called it. They would get together. They weren't explicitly left or right or anything, right? They were just getting together because they wanted to talk to other sociology majors. And they would say like, hey, why don't we sponsor an event on campus? We'll have like a movie night or something, and we'll invite people. They can come and we'll watch a movie. Well, the movie that they watch, that they pick out, is just going to be something that would lean, lean left. I mean, it's not going to lean right. They wouldn't even think about it. Like they wouldn't even imagine that would be like, oh, okay, or or so things like that, right? Would be that. But then it's a college campus, man. That's what happens.
Yeah, and I guess I was just wondering if people feel, safer on college campuses because there's more people. You can find pockets of people that are like you,
Yeah.
and like more so than not. And then I was just like, as you leave that, and you like kids will graduate from the career fair, like me, right? I'll go to the career fair, graduate from Penn State, and get sent off to Massachusetts or like sent off to New Hampshire, and like I wonder if this feeling of safe, feeling connected or supportive, just becomes less and less because then you're away from these pockets of communities, and then maybe the feeling of like, how much can I talk about something?
Yeah, you start meeting people with a wide range of ideas. You start meeting people, all these issues that you've learned about like, okay, let's just take homelessness, right? It's like, wait, why do we have a homeless problem, man? We have enough money to house everybody. You know what I mean? Like, why do we have a homeless problem? So, when I'm 20 years old, I'm just thinking, this is crazy. Like, come on, man. Like, this is a bunch of bullshit. Like, fix the homeless problem. Like, let's build some houses. Let's go, and then you go off and you're like, yeah, let's fix the homeless problem. Like, let's deal with this. And then, you go off to New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, wherever you go off to. And then suddenly you start really engaging with a lot of homeless people. And you're like, wait, hang on a second, man. Wait, what's that? Like, your bike gets stolen by someone who's homeless. It's, and you're like, wait, hang on a second. You start having these other experiences. It's one thing when it's a conversation in your anthropology class or your English class, or God knows your sociology or economics class, but it's quite another thing when you deal with something up close and you're like,
Yeah.
That's why they see people get more conservative as they age, because you want the government to have less of your money because you realize, man, I got to work hard for this money. B, if you are careful about how you spend your money, you start watching people who spend their money very carelessly, like, I'm like, wait, I'm not, I hang on a second. Like, you're being really stupid and reckless. You couldn't afford that car. Why'd you buy that car? That's a really stupid idea. So now what happens when you lose your job and then you're collecting unemployment benefits? And I'm like, I got to pay for that stuff, or like your car this or your car that. You know what I mean? That's like, my taxes are going to have to pay for your stupid decisions. So you start having those. You start seeing that and you're like, whoa. And then you start leaning to the right.
I was thinking about Jeff too, because I know you weren't thinking this, Sam, but the car example,
yeah.
Jeff just got his new car.
But Jeff's careful with his money.
Damn, shots fired.
Yeah. Yeah, but Jeff's careful with his money. You know what I mean? So that's
I'll try my best.
story. Yeah, but that's the thing, man. That's and then you get here. I don't know. At this stage, I've had a lot of opportunity to see a lot of people do really dumb things with their money, and then I'm thinking like, so you get to my age, and then you can really take a much more of a kind of a conservative stance, or maybe like, I get to a certain age. I'm like, man, I'm just tired of people telling me what to think and how to think, and telling me I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And were you saying the money thing? Like, oh man, like we have all these social programs, but I'm seeing these people not spending their money right, like kind of things.
Dude, man. Yeah, that's right. We got all those social programs, but they cost a lot of money. And like, my paycheck isn't every year. Unless I get a big raise, it's like there's more to spend money on. There are more things. It's like, damn, man, that's hard. So that's that idea that people become a little bit more conservative as they age. Not everybody. Some people don't. But many people do, and it's understandable. So, but then I suppose the people who are the spendthrifts also, I guess, I don't know how to explain them, but like for me, Lori and I, we don't have kids, right? And our biggest tax bill is school taxes. In school, we have good schools in this town, man. So you spend a lot of money on school taxes. So our whole lives, we spent a lot of money on school taxes, and we're like, hey, man, what do we get? What are we getting for that? You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah.
What we get from it is not having a bunch of delinquents breaking into our cars and, doing all sorts of stuff. So it's like, yeah, I'll pay my school taxes, man.
Thanks, because I was curious what you got from that, so you answered it.
Yeah, well, that's what we get, man. We don't have kids in our neighborhood who are like me when I was a kid. So like, all right, that's good. We'll pay our school taxes. But but this is the thing, right? People start to feel some kind of way, and that's sort of the origin of that. And then what a lot of people will say is, oh, well, you'll come to you'll come to the correct view, or you'll see the light as you age. Like I have a lot of parents who will say that to my more really liberal students. Yeah, my father laughs at me and he tells me, yeah, you'll see the light when you grow up and mature. You know, I'm like, well, don't say that either. That's not fair.
Interesting.
You know.
Mm.
So
Wow,
anyway, so it was a good class
listening.
today, man. I really appreciated it. Had a bunch of students after class come up to me and say like, hey, I'm conservative, man. I just want you to know I'm also quite conservative, and I haven't had any. I can't really tell what my professors are thinking and so on. So I think that I wish a lot of people would watch that class, because I wish that narrative wasn't so strong. You know, this narrative that the universities like Penn State, again, some of them they're far left. Oh my God, and there are more far left universities than there are far right universities, but not by a big amount. Most are kind of like Penn State, and I wish more people really understood that, so they would not have this narrative and this rhetoric that, we're all a bunch of knuckleheads. Well, we are a bunch of knuckleheads, us professors.
And by knuckleheads, you just mean silencing another side, like.
Yeah, we're really not, and that's what makes it so interesting. That for me, as somebody like me who, every class I do, I'm thinking like, Lori's always reminding me, it's like, hey, wait, that little 10 seconds right there, someone can pull that out and they can make you look like a ultra right winger, or this 10 seconds here, they can pull it out and make you look like an ultra left winger, and now, well, that's what happens,
I just, for some reason, I'm not having, like, not for some reason, but I don't have foresight into, like, what's the domino? What could you say, Sam, would be like the domino effect of, like, if this remains a dominant narrative?
Yeah,
Just,
that's a really
what's
good question.
the,
I think it just continues to divide us unnecessarily. Yeah,
Yeah.
continues to divide, and it's a big problem. And Trump going at, and that's not to say that all these universities, they have all these DEI things, right? Like for example, I every year, I mean, they spend a lot of money on DEI stuff, right? Just because they do, but less so now because Trump has, the administration has come in and just like put a hammer to a lot of that stuff. So, and okay, good. Like, we pushed, they pushed, and, even like, me, right? Well, you have to do it too. You're an employee here. You have to take that one about that, that course that takes about an hour on.
Yep.
Like, I don't know what it is. I don't even know what to call it. Like,
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, I forget what it's called too.
Diversity, belonging, and because you got to learn how to treat people with respect. And so, like, really, man? Like, okay, so I do that? Like, I got to take that? Like, well, I needed it.
You still got to learn it, Sam. I still got to
Like,
learn
dude, stop making jokes, man. We wrote this course for you.
You're like one of the stock photos of a bad example.
Yeah. Of me, right? Wait, why are all these stock photos from my class? Like, as the guy, but you don't have that. You have that about this issue. It's like, well, wait, there are lots of other issues we could have it about, like that would lean in a different direction. Why do we have that? So clearly, we have spent a lot of money on things, and like, okay, it's pushing. It's good. You push so far and then you come back. All right, listen, man, Jeff, how about if we go to some questions?
Yeah, let's start at the
Fury.
Let's start at number 1, and then we'll skip ahead to number 13. So we'll do yesterday's class questions, and then we'll go to slide 2 after and go through last Thursday's class. Since we're already on the topic, let's do that.
Yeah, but anyway, man, I want to just do a shout out to Fury from the Netherlands, man. Thanks for the clear-headedness in these dire times. please keep America talking for the love of everything that is holy. Oh my God. Hang on. I got to remember that. I got to use that. Yo, Fury. Thank you, man, for the love of everything that is holy. I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, no kidding, man. Things are dire over here, Fury, actually. They're a little bit, well, our 4 colleagues, David and Susan and Basim and Julie, last week, they said it, man. The rest of the world's watching, and we're going like, holy smokes, man! Americans, keep it together, crying out loud. All right, Jeff, we're going to start with 13. Yeah, okay. This is yesterday's class. All right, cool, man. All right. Kelly from Australia asked, Sam, at what age were you when you became more vocal about the issues you have the most passion for? I would say 20, 24 probably. Yeah, 23 or 24. That's when 23 is when I got, I started, 20. I just turned 24. That's when I really discovered intense poverty in Latin America. That was before I first engaged. Like, whoa, man. And the role that the United States played in helping to create and sustain that poverty. Like, really intense. That, for me, was when I just really opened my eyes in a different kind of way. And then that was what I really became passionate about for many, many, many years. And well, it still is. Even though I don't talk about it in the way that I have in the past, but yeah, I would say I was 24. That's when my eyes just woke, like just opened, man. I didn't have any idea that this stuff was happening, man. Just didn't have any idea. All of the nefarious things that were going on in the world that were really connected to my government, and just hadn't just been aware. And yeah.
Do you remember what mattered more at the time?
To what the
Before
issues
that?
were?
Or like before you had, like your own awakening of
Yeah.
things that matter? Was there other things that you remember mattered more? Just curious.
Well, like the very first book I read, I've talked about this in the past, you might remember, but the very first book I read was about favelas, these urban slums in Northeast Brazil. And it was about this priest who was doing this work. It was this really tiny, it's just kind of small, like 200 page paperback, real small print. It was Penguin put it out. And I was just like, damn, I just didn't have any idea that people lived like that. And his work, and how much his work was just undermined by the government, by the Brazilian government, and then ultimately by the Brazilian military, and which was being propped up and funded by the United States, right? And he wasn't highly political because he was really just dealing with the poverty, man. God, the lives of people, the suffering. But he led me to then another book. I'm like, wait, hang on. So then I was at the library, and I found this book in the way that I often find books. It was somebody and some professor was throwing it out, and they had a box of books, and I reached in and I grabbed them. I'm like, oh, let me read this. Anyway, then I was at the library and I found this book on liberation theology that just was sitting somewhere. I have no idea how that just popped out, and it was Marxism and liberation theology. And I was like, wait, what? And so then I was like, Marxism and liberation theology, wait, this Catholic Church? It's like, wait, and so then I started reading that, and there were all these priests saying the same thing that this guy was saying. But I'm like, wait, but these are priests. Right? These are not leftist communists, you know, like they're priests. And so then I that's what led me into the Catholic Church and these pastoral agents, you know, that blew my mind. And then I read this book called Cry of the People by this woman, Penny Lernoux. This was the most pivotal book of my life, of that period of my life. Lernoux. She died of cancer. I think she died of breast cancer probably like 30 years ago, but she was a journalist. Penny Lernoux, Cry of the People. And then she wrote a second book about the church hierarchy. But wow, man, she detailed all of the priests, nuns, and lay clergy, lay agents, pastoral agents, and people, volunteers, and so on, who had been murdered, tortured, and murdered by governments that were being supported by the United States. I mean, she laid out. She was an American, like I think she was. She might have been Canadian, but anyway. But she was a journalist, so she just detailed all of these really horrific connections between the United States and these governments in Latin America that had been going on, you know, at that point in time for 30 years, right? And that led me then to learning more about the CIA, and then I started reading these books from former CIA agents who were had gotten out of the CIA, and then they write these books and they submit them to the agency, and the agency tells them what they have to what they can't say, and they have to, you know, take things out and that kind of stuff, right? So then I was like, wait, hang on, is this like real? So then I'm reading about these CIA agents, right? And I'm like, whoa, man, these guys, they're saying the same thing that Penny Lernoux is saying, that these priests were saying, that all these folks are saying. And then, you know, then the CIA agent, his name was Philip Agee. He was really quite well known. He was one of the very first people that spoke out. I think my recollection is that he worked in Cuba, and he was behind trying to assassinate Castro. We tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, like, you know, a dozen times or whatever, man. It's really hilarious, actually, like how they tried to do it, you know, the different methods they used, you know, it's really funny. But he was quite a humorous guy, and he came and spoke. So I went to listen to him, and I was like, dang, man. So that just opened me in a new way to questioning everything that I thought was, I'm going to go back to Furious thing, everything that I thought was holy, in the world, man. And I was a young lad, right? I was 24, you know, and then going on 25. This was this whole several years. And so, it really kind of destroyed me in some ways, but it also really opened me up. And then I started traveling into Latin America because I needed to see for myself what people were experiencing. And I worked with the church, and I, you know, met one priest who had been tortured by the Americans, right? He told me, I mean, I stayed with him. I lived in his house for a hot minute, and he gave me the details, man, stuff that he knew. And
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
really intense, man.
Yeah, wow.
So that anyway, that's like, you talk about the passion for, and I think that's like what yesterday one of the students, this guy Joe, called me a radical centrist. He said, yeah, you're kind of a radical centrist. I asked him how he'd identify me, and I thought, yeah, that's definitely me. I'm radical because I'll go far in one direction or far in another direction, but I'm always with an attempt to bring it back to the middle. And I think one of the things that I feel like so many Americans don't know, and they don't pay attention to it, is the nefarious things that happen in the name of the U.S. People, we want to believe that, you know, we're good and we do the best, and we're trying to do the, you know, just we want to see we just don't, people don't know. They don't travel, they don't see it, they don't talk to people, they don't read about it. There's just so many evil things that happen and that we don't pay attention. You know, like I was, for example, when I was in Costa Rica, this was back in 1987, and I went to a refugee camp in Costa Rica. And I'm like, wait, who are these refugees, man? How you become a refugee in Costa Rica, right? So I went with a couple pastors, right? They were Costa Rican, they were Protestant.
And these pastors are all on missions.
Yeah, they worked in this refugee community and they worked outside of it. They were just really active in the sort of social and political issues, right? But they invited me to go with them to this community. So I did. And man, I got to hear the stories of people, like how they became refugees. And I'm like, there was this whole group of people they lost their land to the Dole Corporation, right? And the Dole Corporation, they brought, and then later these two pastors, right? And then this other American nun who was down there, I got the whole story, right? Like the Dole Corporation, they needed to expand their land. And so the Costa Rican government just came and kicked these people off their land, man. And then they are living in this refugee community. And I'm like, wait, Dole Corporation. So so we went to the land, right? There's the land. That's where these people used to live. And so it's banana plantation, right? So imagine me, I'm 20 at this time, 27 years old, 26 years old. And here I am walking, this is land that a U.S. corporation, right? And it's implicated, right? These people weren't making it up. I mean, this wasn't being made up. I mean, I understood I had studied the politics of this anyway in Costa Rica, right? So it's like, and then here I am in this community and I'm like, how am I going to be anything but left? Where am I going to be right? I'm going to be like, we need to support the United States. How am I going to do support the U.S. taxpayers and UX? It's like, no, man, fuck, you were stealing land from people. Go talk to these people, little kids walking around. I'll never forget these kids. They were walking. I mean, they had like diapers on. They had nothing. They had no shoes. They had no shirt. They had diapers. This was a refugee community, they didn't have these showers. I mean, it was not, how are you going to be anything but really just feel hate toward the people who did this,
Yeah.
So I had to live in that space. I'm like, how do I manage this? It's like these days I have a much more thoughtful way of understanding how to hold. I'm a radical centrist, right? So I can hold two things together, two opposite things, and not go crazy, right? This is the two opposite polar ideas. I can hold them in my mind and not lose my mind, right? I can do that today. But back then I wasn't able to do that. This was my first experience of meeting people who have been absolutely victimized by my government and ultimately by me because, I'm the American, right? I was the only American there. So, and what I knew at the time, what I've always said, because I've been in a lot of refugee community, a lot of places like this, is like, well, any American, if you're an American and if you know what that means, American, right? There are certain things that you subscribe to. And if you're truly an American, one is like, you don't victimize people. Like you just don't do certain things. This is what makes the whole Trump, the stuff with ICE right now, very tenuous. It's thin ice, man, because Americans are, the nature, you support the underdog, you support people who are working really hard to try to do what's best for them. There are just certain ways that Americans see the world. So I knew that any American who I could take down to that community would be like, this is wrong. This is evil, man. This is evil. Anybody, it wouldn't matter. Republican, libertarian, Democrat, left socialist, wouldn't matter. Anybody I would take down there and say, hey, talk to these people. They would walk away going, okay, that's wrong. That's evil. That's, a bunch of bullshit. Right. So I didn't, and they would say like this has to stop, like this is wrong, and nobody's going to say, well, but the government, the Dole Corporation they need more land, and we need bananas, and so they need to. It's okay. You're going to have to kick them off the land. They're the losers of the world, of this part of history, like, and that's the nature of it. And I'm the winner because I can go to my supermarket and I can buy bananas. Americans are not going to say that. They just are not. There are going to be some people, a few people who do, but those people are not in the bell curve of who an American is. They're just not, man. So yeah. Anyway, that's my answer, Kelly, to your question. Right? I'm glad I didn't try to answer that in class. I would have been too. So that I became very passionate about these issues, right? For many years. I mean, it was my work as a Latin Americanist, working and continuing to work with the church and people who were very committed to working with the poor. And by the way, Elijah, do you know the Dole Fruit Company? Do you know like who Dole was? And do you know Dole's connection to Hawaii?
No, I don't. I know the company, but I don't know what they're connected to or who they are.
Dole was when we took over Hawaii. Dole was the first principal, the Admiral. I think it was Admiral Dole, General. I don't know, whatever it was, but it was the first person to head the protectorate of Hawaii. Yeah, and the fruit company emerged out of that, and we took Hawaii because we didn't take. Dude, Hawaii was not. It wasn't there. Hawaii has quite a sordid history. Yeah, and Native Hawaiians, if you ever talk to them, will tell you about that history. Yeah, so yeah, do. Wait, so
what about Dole being the principal?
Well, he was I think he was
and the protect.
He was put in charge of the protectorate. I think we would call it the protectorate of Hawaii. I don't remember before it was a state. You know,
just because he was.
He was the guy who was, I think, man, it's so many years. Just the name Dole, every time I see the name Dole, we'll do the research on it. Someone in the stream will say it. But, yeah. All right. So anyway, Kelly, thanks for that question, man. Stephen and Axel, they all ask, what's a conservative in 2025? Oh, man, that's such a... Well, students already said you don't have to be MAGA to be a conservative. I don't think any of these students were MAGA, by the way. Yeah. Well, the one guy wasn't because he said very clearly, I don't like Trump. And so I have a funny feeling that the other three, I don't know if they were MAGA. Well, they definitely weren't hardcore MAGA, that's for sure. And I don't know what a conservative is in 2025. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my first question was, what do you mean when you say I'm a conservative? And they all said, like, well, I'm physically very conservative. There are a lot of social issues that I feel a more conservative approach to, like abortion, like individual rights, individual, goals. But my guess is, but that could have been the entire class. But that's actually, I don't know what a conservative is in 2025. Does that surprise you, Elijah? That I don't have any idea.
Not right now, because I think you said something similar to that a few podcasts ago, just about what is what's a conservative now in 2025, or like what is I don't know. But really quickly, I looked into the Dole, Sanford Dole.
Sanford Dole, yeah, I was gonna say Sanford, and then I thought, like,
and he had ties to the U.S. government to create a coup to
we put him in
overthrow.
Power. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And that's out of Dole. That's the Dole Fruit Company is named after Sanford Dole. He was the first person in charge of Hawaii as a protector.
And that was it says that it was James Dole who established the Hawaiian Pineapple Company.
Yeah.
And then his cousin Sanford Dole was a powerful figure.
That's okay. That's right. Yeah, the two of them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they overthrew Queen Liliuokalani.
Yeah, the United States did.
Got it. Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Hawaii was just this empty island sitting out there in the middle of the Pacific. And we're like, oh, hey, let's go live here. It's like, so yeah, it's crazy. I mean, these are the stories, right? These are the stories of life, right? That, and see, this is the side where, for me, I don't feel like it's left to be, when I see things like that, or like for me, my experience with in Costa Rica, for example, to be really angry at at doing what we did there, right? I don't feel like it's seen as a leftist thing.
It's weird to be seen as anything like that.
Yeah, I don't see it as left. I think it is a human thing, and I see it as, again, the vast majority of Americans, if they would have been there with me in that community, that refugee community in Costa Rica, they'd be enraged, man. The MAGA people wouldn't matter. They could be MAGA, they could be left, they could be whatever they would be. They'd be enraged. This is not acceptable. That's what the vast majority.
Do you think if the vast majority of people saw things like this, it would just uproot people from their red-blue position and just kind of centralize people?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Yeah. No question about it. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, for example, the Washington Post just did and it's complicated, right? The Washington Post just did an expose on the Veterans Administration and how many billions of dollars each year are wasted because veterans are scamming the money. They're scamming the whole entire administration, right? They're claiming to be disabled, and then they're not disabled at all. So they're getting all these benefits, and they're not, and I'm like, okay.
Is that the case? That's what's happening?
Yeah, so that's the Washington Post did this expose, right? And that's again one of these other things. Like, people have this idea that the Washington Post, the New York Times, these are all like these liberal. No, they're not. Just like, come on, man. The opinion pages, but they're all doing these kinds of exposés that are the same damn thing that Fox News would be doing, right? Anyway, but here's the problem, right? Like with our glorious, what's his name? Who's the guy? The Tesla guy again? Elon Musk.
Elon?
He came in and didn't he slash the Veterans Administration budget by 10% or whatever? I'm like, dude, okay, you're gonna have to add the 10% back. They're gonna have to go back in and try to stop that stuff, right? But you're only gonna have more of it, because you have nobody overseeing all this stuff. You have to. It's like, again, I'm the radical centrist. It's like, dude, there's truth in everything. So you gotta, I don't know. Okay, Michelle, let's go to this other number 16, Jeff. Michelle asks on the live stream, is it harder for women or other minorities to be openly conservative? Yeah, I think so, man. Definitely. Yeah. Well, you're just challenged. It's harder. Hang on, is it hard? You're judged more. You're expected people of color, people in the queer community, you're expected to be left, right? But I think every gay person of my age or so who I know is very conservative, actually, including on social issues, including on issues that I know people that I'm like, dude, wait, what? Where are you? But you're gay. You can't. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. It's like, all right, but it's hard. But you get judged more for certain perspectives. Yeah. So you're gonna get judged. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. It's a little bit more complex, because for example, if I'm black or brown or I'm a woman, I can't. There are these certain. So many conservatives will say oh, well, the sexism doesn't exist anymore. And it's like, wait, hang on a second. Did you really just say that? Are you kidding me? Are you studying have you read any other research that's out there that's showing how prevalent sexism still is in all these different places, and discrimination against women in all of these many different ways? And so I can, as a woman, I can lean conservative, but like in the end, I got to come up against all of the people with really extreme views that are like, wait, hang on a second, man, that's not. So anyway, that's going to make it harder, but at the same time, like, okay, push. All right, man. And by the way, when I say that, what I just said there, doesn't mean that there's far less discrimination against women today than there was 30 years ago.
Like explicit,
man. Even
right?
Look, come on, man. And it's not just because, we had a woman who was running for president, or who was vice president. It's not about that. It's not that. It's just, there's still a lot of stuff that women tolerate and have to deal with. Sometimes don't tolerate, but far less than in the past. The data are very clear, and talking to people, far less than in the past, man. That doesn't mean it's gone though. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a slightly different idea, but it's kind of similar. It's another article we were looking at in class this morning. It's this author and PhD who is a ex-con. Her name is like Michelle Alexander, and she's an author. She was talking about like how like the new Jim Crow essentially, and like the racial caste system, and we have it just keeps increasing, like the racial incarceration, like the amount of those that are like Black within the prison system. And if they wanted to get the amount of incarcerated back to the population that it was in 1970, they'd have to release 4 out of 5 of inmates within the prison to get the population down to what it was in 1970 within the system.
1970.
Yeah.
What happened
like,
in 1970? What started happening in 1970? So the question would be, right? And this is just a question, right? It's not saying, did Black people and Latino people and Native Americans, by the way, did they suddenly just start committing a lot more crimes than white people? And so therefore, a hugely disproportionate number of Black and Latino and Native people end up in prison since 1970 because they started committing so much more crimes? Or was that true to a degree, but something else was also happening? Because
I think there's just something else.
Because there's so many Black people and Hispanic people in prison today, and there wasn't in 1970, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and just how like the idea that something like relating it back to the women, like some things do go away and it does decrease, but maybe
For sure.
it just looks different. Like instead of literal slavery. I mean, there's more slavery now than there ever was. You were saying globally, but just the idea of like it just everyone goes into the prison system. Like it just put
you have to
there are people in the system.
So the thing is, you say like, all right, hang on, let me look at this, right? The thing is, this is what I'm saying all the time. It's like, well, let me not disregard something if I haven't really looked at it. So like, for example, I have the opportunity to speak with a lot of women who are in positions of significant power. I've had that opportunity in my stage of life, right? In my position in life. So I will often ask women, be in conversation like, hey, how is it for you compared to the men in your circle, right? Where you work, where you worship, where you hang out, or whatever, right? What do you, in other words, how much sexism is still out there, so to speak? I don't think I've ever had a woman, and I've asked this so many times to so many people, I don't think I've ever had a woman say like, nah, I don't see anything. There's almost always like here, can you see my eye roll here? Like, where do I start? And these are, not women who, I don't know, what can I say? Well, I don't want to offend anyone, but these are, these are not women who don't shave their legs. You know what I mean? How about that? There's a joke, right? These are not hippie women on the left. These are women who are in positions of power and who are very thoughtful, and they're not walking around with a chip on their shoulder. And I ask them that question, and they're like, yeah, how much time do you have? What do you want? And then, I don't just accept anything that anybody says, because I never do that. I always kind of push back a little bit. Well, but what do you think about this? And what do you think about, in a way that I don't push back in class, because I'm very careful about pushing back against students, because I don't want, I can't push back. Students say some things and I can't push them. Be like, hang on a second, man. I do a little bit, but not. If you're not my student, I'm going to push much harder.
Right.
Anyway, so that's what I mean. For me, that's what I mean when I say, like, yeah, I don't, and I don't know, maybe a lot of other people are asking those same questions, but I'm asking them, and like, how is it to be a woman minister? The other day I was having a conversation, and there was a woman that came, an electrician who came to our house, and she was a woman. She had been here before. And she came to pick up. She had left a light here after she did some work in the summertime. She finally came to pick it up, and I said to her, I'm like, hey man, I had a question for you. And I said, how is it for you in this field that is 95% men? How is it for you? Like, what's up? Like, tell me, because she's really confident. Man, she's really good, right? She was very, yeah. I mean, she's an electrician. It's not like she's competent or not competent. She's an electrician.
Yeah.
But when I asked, when I called the company back to send somebody out again, I said, like, hey, can you send her? Right? I said, and I used her name. I like, send her, because she was really good at diagnosing we had a complex problem that when she came the first time, and I knew it was complex because my brother-in-law is an amazingly skilled electrical contractor, and I showed him the problem using FaceTime and stuff. He's like, oh man, that's really complex. You're gonna have to get someone in there. We have 3 different boxes. We have a fuse box and 2 circuit breaker boxes, and it's just a mess, man. So I just knew it was complex, and I said, like, and she figured this thing out before. And I'm like, hey, send her back. Can you send her? Mm-hmm. And the woman's like, oh, yeah, all right, I'll send her. She's our best diagnostician. Diagnostician? How do you say that?
Better than me.
Yeah, all right, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I know, man. Well, you might have someone else that's just as good, but she was awesome. Anyway, so I asked her the question, like, how is it? She's like, well, it's interesting you asked that. She said, I get people saying things often, but she was like, hey, whatever, it doesn't bother me, it's fine. But she said the people that say things most often are women. They're not certain I can do the job. She said, I rarely show up at a job where there are men and there are other men working the job. Let's say, like we had a couple people here. When she was here, we had 2 different people here doing 2 different jobs. She said, well, it's never going to be those guys. It's not those guys. It rarely is. It's other women. And they're not sure I can do the job.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Right?
It is interesting.
But guys in the field, if I show up in my truck, the guys who are in the field, they're plumbers or they're general contractors or they're carpenters or they're whatever, right? I pull up in my truck. They know I'm an electrician. They know I can do the job. I'm here to do a job. They got it. They understand it, but other people don't. You see, that's what's so interesting, right? It's a complex thing. So when I say that thing about women in the field who I ask them that question and they roll their eyes, it doesn't mean it's sexism by men, right? It means that people, but this woman, but she was fine. Like she couldn't think of a single experience in which she was something really totally worked to her advantage. It's just comments and different things that has to roll off her shoulder, and
Right.
it's not every day. It's fine, but
From like a client, something in the house, like, oh, I didn't expect it to be you, or something.
And
like
I had
that.
a woman who was.
Yeah.
I was talking to her. She was VP of this organization, and they were having this gather. This is fairly common. I think this is the kind of common thing you'll hear a lot. And she was just like, they were having this meeting, and they asked her, somebody, a man who was more or less my age, if I remember correctly, they needed someone to go bring the coffee in. And he asked her to do it. And I'm like, and she's like, I'm the VP. You know what I mean? Like, I don't go get coffee. Like, I'm the VP. She's like, I can do it, but like, why? And she said, that shit happens all the time, man, all the time. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to not believe her? You know what I mean? She's like, she worked at this was a financial institution, it turned out, so I'm like, yeah.
That's so interesting. It's like even within like explicit hierarchical like roles, like that define the hierarchy, there's like this implicit
the kind of thing, right? So I don't know that. Okay, so this woman's saying like, yeah, God, it happens all the time. Oh wait, did it happen all the time? What do you mean all the time? I didn't like push her. What do you mean all the time? How many times? Like da 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 da. Like, I want to, really get that kind of thing. But I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna accept that it happens, and that a lot of men. There were 10 or 15 or whatever men were around the table, is my recollection. It was like 10 or 15. I'm going to bet, although I don't know, that not a single one went home to their wife or their friends or whatever and said, God, you wouldn't believe this thing happened today. Like, our vice president was asked to go get the coffee, meanwhile, like, the intern is in the room. They didn't ask the intern, you know what I mean? She's the only woman, right? But people don't go home and they don't say that. But maybe they did. I don't know.
I wonder if they notice it.
That would be my point. They probably wouldn't even notice.
They don't notice.
Yeah.
That they don't notice, right?
And so I'm not a radical on the left or the right. I am a radical centrist. So I'm going to hear these stories. But I'm also going to hear stories of people who cry sexism, sexism, that's racism, when it's not, man. Just back off.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's a thing that those are the stories, man. We got to be willing to hear. Okay, DJ from Tennessee asked, I think somebody answered this. Which figure, either historical or modern, do you consider embodied the best of conservative values? That was that. And somebody said, I think Dennis yesterday said Jesus of Nazareth. I'm like, and then I said, wait, Jesus was a communist, man. And they were like, no, he wasn't. He was a communist, but not he didn't support people supporting big government. He supported people supporting themselves. I'm not really sure about that, but whatever. I don't believe there's nothing that we know. There's nothing that is attributed to Jesus that we know that Jesus actually said. Okay. He spoke in Aramaic. It got translated into Greek and Hebrew and decades later, the stories that get passed down. And then ultimately it turns into English or whatever language we're speaking today. So we don't know that, but in any case,
Wasn't like the oldest part of like the Old Testament. I think I was listening on like one of these the JRE podcast, that it's like some of the scrolls are like the little piece. It's like the size of like a napkin.
That was that was you talked about that a few weeks ago. Or a while back. Like the only thing that we know. Like, anyway, for me, man, the best of conservative values. I think it's, for me, I I don't have a specific historical or modern figure because I don't really know. I think the best of conservative values are people who really support, who are able to really manage them. Self-sufficiency, fundamental self-sufficiency, and helping others to be self-sufficient. Those are the best of conservative values. Not relying on other people, but being willing to accept help from other people, because sometimes we all need help, and recognizing that we can reach out and help other people in certain times, right? Like the Amish, this kind of thing. So to me, that's the best, not imposing certain ideas on other folks. And to me, so they're really aren't historical figures, but it's a way of being in the world. Okay, Jason, man, from Jefferson. Is the political spectrum circular or linear? Oh, damn! It's circular, right? Clearly, it's circular. Yeah, just like we see now, all these I did the class a couple weeks ago called snowflakes, and I'm like, God, I just can't. I was listening to yesterday. I was listening to these very conservative folks who were like all offended by all sorts of things. That wait, what are you offended by? And they want to like chop down all these things. I'm like, hang on a second, man. That's what the liberals were doing forever. Like, you can't be offended. You can be offended by words. Like, come on, man. That's what you've been saying forever. You shouldn't be offended. They're just words. It's like, all right, well, whatever. That's quite circular in my book, but okay. Let's see. Netherlands is the point of a discussion to change someone's mind to win or lose? No, the point of a discussion is always to change one's own mind. I go into every single conversation I ever have thinking I want to change my mind. I want to learn something so I can change my mind. That's to broaden someone's mind, to open up to new ideas. Yeah, no. I don't know, Elijah, about you, but for me, I want to have my mind, like when you go to these red blue dialogues with Lori, it's like, aren't you just like wanting to hear things to change your mind?
Yeah, what's new? Just to, it's you had the lens of discovery on. You're going in wanting your mind to be changed, or because you have the lens of discovery on.
Yeah.
So you're trying to discover something new.
Yeah.
And that's what you and Laurie have in your book, the lead the lens of discovery. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah. Okay, Pathfinder asks, how do the students feel that liberals in other countries are viewed as conservative rather than liberal in the United States? Yeah, I know there's so many, especially in Europe, man. The students here who think they're liberal are like, damn, you're actually not very liberal at all. And and a lot of students here who think they're conservative are not very conservative at all. I mean, it's just the world that sees us in very, very different ways. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But I'm going to keep going. John Paul from Liverpool said, how do conservatives feel about the propaganda pushed by the left, and how has that impacted you? This would have been a really, I wish we'd have pulled that question up, John Paul's question, because I think a lot of the students would have said they were pissed at it. A lot of students anyway just feel annoyed by it. They're tired of hearing it. They've been tired over the years. This is what I hear from liberal students, or pardon me, from conservative students. They just get annoyed, just like it gets jammed down our throats, and it's a lot of propaganda stuff, So students have gotten annoyed by it. Man, we got a lot of questions, Dawg. PGB Hart from, do you think of opinions, if you don't support DEI, you're a racist, or if you're pro-life, you're a misogynist? Yeah, well, that's just, okay, that's pretty, yeah. I'm not sure that people actually Do they say that? Well, some people do, actually. It's racist to not support DE&I. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess they probably say that. Yeah. Huh. All right, man. Office hours. So Axel says, do you think the students know that conservative is different in all nations? I don't think they do, actually. That's why I actually was thinking about having a couple international students up on the table, but the problem is it just would widen the conversation so much. So I was thinking that it'd be really kind of cool to have a conversation with just international students, and we will, about an issue, not this exact issue, but something similar to it. Yeah. Okay. Patrick from Iowa saying, I think what we learned is that what you see online is not reality. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we learned that. I learned that. Yeah. And to tier 2 members, the dogs out there, we got to give a shout out to Scott Kushner, man, for being a tier 2 member.
Being a dog.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's really, people don't, we get, yeah, first off, all of the, any income we get on this goes back into the stream. Like Penn State has I don't know what, a $2 billion budget or something like that. Of course, $1 billion of that is probably football, but no, no, it's not. Trust me, it's not. But we have a big, huge budget. Maybe it's $1 billion. I don't know what our budget is. But the point is, we don't get that. We're not getting that. We're running these cameras. We've been able to get our cameras. We don't own them. All the equipment that we have, a bunch of it I paid for out of pocket. We have a switcher in the back room. I paid for that. I can't get Penn State to pay for these things. Elijah and Jeff, they all work for World in Conversation, so we're like borrowing them for the stream. Yeah, we don't get. This is not a money generating. We wanted to have some T-shirts and sell T-shirts and try to raise a little money, like Social 19 T-shirts. But Penn State told us we couldn't do that. We had to sell them at cost. Yeah. Like, what's the purpose of selling T-shirts at cost? If we're trying to raise money to we need right now, we just realized, Jeff just discovered in Darnisha that we need some new equipment, and it's going to cost us. We have our 3 cameras in the room. Elijah, you don't know any of this, but anyways, the 3 cameras in the room, that we have 4 of them on the walls, and then we have 3 that we put in the room. And Penn State paid for the ones on the walls because it's in this big classroom and other people can use them, right? And then we control them with a joystick in the back room. But we also have 3 cameras that we put on tripods, 2 in the front and 1 in the second row. But those are wireless. We used to connect them to the system, but we moved to this new system, so we had to get these wireless transmitters. We have transceivers that we had to pay for, so I got someone to pay for those. But we have these transmitters to convert the signal to a signal that can be read by our system in the back room. And though we paid $400 for those, and now we just realized that we might have to get different ones because I don't know if you've noticed, Elijah, but we can't get the voice, the audio, and the video in sync always, right? Jeff and Jeff are working really hard to get it close, and Jeff was there yesterday working on a million things, but it's hard, man. It takes a lot. We're running this on a shoestring, man, and it's so incredibly difficult. My God.
We can't sell T-shirts, man. That's crazy.
Nah, and then we were thought we could sell maybe we could sell T-shirts. We can make $25 a T-shirt. So if we sold, 100 of them, that would be okay, $2,500. That would pay for something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pay for some equipment like this stuff, but they're like, no, you can't do that. I don't know if we could sell 100 T-shirts, but whatever. So yeah, so we can't, we just live on our YouTube revenue, which is not very much money. You know what I mean? We're not Joe Rogan, Yeah. So we haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. Damn. Anyway,
We need to get you on there.
so anyway, somebody like Scott Kushner, who becomes a T2 member, a tier 2 member, or Fury from the Netherlands, who gives us 22 euros. That's big for, I mean, this adds up, right? Although the money's got to come in and has to go to Penn State, and then we got to try to spend it and stuff. But it matters. It's not easy. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Julie says, plus
Thanks
all
for
the blue
breaking down
moons.
the
Julie said,
What's
plus
that?
all the blue moons that you need to send down to Colombia.
Yeah, that's right. We got to send beer down to Columbia to keep Julie happy, so she keeps working for us. Penn State won't pay for the beer. Can you imagine that? They won't pay for beer.
Come on.
What is there in life if we can't buy beer for our employees?
Yo, I hope Julie tried the Blue Moon Mango because it's fire.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you,
Have you had that?
a convert. Yeah. So
Good.
no, that's our life, man. Anyway, Jeff, a quick question for you, by the way.
She said she did.
Yeah, did you do we need those new devices these converters, or are we going to be able to survive without them?
I mean, it's hard to know. Essentially, all of the cameras have to go through this network system that goes into the computer, and Penn State realized that there was a huge network issue within 100 Thomas. Essentially, at midnight, the system would reset, and then the first class always comes in around 9 a.m., and those students log into the Wi-Fi, and they get connected, and then they leave after their 9 o'clock class, and then 10 o'clock students come in, and then they get connected, and it repeats every hour. The problem was that people were staying connected to that room even hours after they had left. So by the time Social 19 happens, there's, instead of 500, 600, 700 students, it's over 2,000 or so people, and it's just clogging up all of the data and all of the bandwidth essentially in the room. And so the cameras that are remote, the ones that we control on the joystick, those we can get pretty much in sync perfectly with each other. But the other cameras, the JVCs, they're called, they're connected via wireless receivers and such. They're all competing with the Wi-Fi and everybody in the room, and so it's super hard to know. And so the receiver that Sam was talking about of us possibly getting, it would take the amount of bandwidth required for the data to go into the network. It would reduce it by like 90%. They've just made huge leaps and bounds of being able to transmit 1080p video, which is what we could send them very easily with those cameras. And so is it worth it? I don't know, because Penn State is still waiting for the final things to get done to fix the network in the room. And then once that happens, potentially, then our issues might be solved, or it might not be solved. And maybe we can get this stuff and it still won't be solved. It's very complicated. The network adds a whole level of complications that we didn't have in the past. For instance, we just used to connect all of the cameras through really long HDMI cables and SDI cables. And then eventually we got wireless systems together. And then now we have like this whole thing together. Yeah.
Yeah. So the goal is to not have the kind of thing where you see my mouth move, like, and then you see me talk, like the mouth moves, da, 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 hey, and then I talk. Like, that's not cool, man. But whatever. It's all good. It's amazing. Luckily, Jeff's on. He's a nerd. He's an AV nerd. So he's gonna, if it's a problem, he's gonna try to figure it out. But he's doing a million other things like editing video and.
Yeah, I apologize that was so much information. It's very it's very complicated, and I'm not even sure if I'm even looking at the right thing. Like, we might fix this whole network issue, and there might be other issues that pop up, and it's like, oh, this is yeah. Back in the old
Hey, I
days, it
have
was
a-
easy when we
actually-
just plugged right in.
I actually have something. Yeah, this is kind of cool. I want to go this question that CTB from Apex, North Carolina, asked. Oh yeah, it's 4. It's actually kind of so. Elijah, we did this class last Thursday on discrimination, and I didn't get to. We just kind of got lost in some other issue. I didn't get to the study that I was going to do, which was the study of discrimination. And what they found, it was in schools, K through 12 schools, and what they found actually was that the worst discrimination, the most problematic discrimination, was against Chinese Americans, and these are students, right? Chinese American students. And they were looked at schools all over the country, and that in fact, Black American student, and then second was Hispanic American students, and the third, and Black students and white students were basically kind of treated equally. They weren't seeing any discrimination. But this was a particular thing. It was actually a really interesting study. What they did was, and I'll do it in class. I actually want to have a conversation about this with some Chinese students or Chinese American students. But what they did was they sent these letters out to principals of schools all over the country from parents, purportedly of parents, saying like, hey, my child's going to be in your school. I really would like to have a conversation with you about my child and the needs that my child will have, right? So they sent it like in the summertime kind of thing, you know. And then they wanted to see, it's just discrimination. So we're gonna measure this by whether people got a response or not, you know. So it's not, it isn't that my child was directly discriminated against because the teacher did X, Y, or Z. It wasn't that at all. It's like, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna send these letters out to principals, and we're gonna see if they respond. And if they don't respond, that's going to be kind of just an insight into discriminatory behavior. And the reason why that's important is because principals are key people in schools who mediate the connection between teachers and students and students and their families, right? So if the principal's not doing their job for some students, but they do the job for other students, then it's kind of an indication of the, wait, hang on a second, that's how my child could be treated, and we're not going to have access to things. So what they did was they changed they sent out like 50,000 of these letters. I mean, this was big, and they didn't send 2 of them to a principal. They were like 50,000 different principals, or 40,000, whatever it was. But anyway.
And would they send like one letter was like from an Asian family, and like another letter was like from a white family?
The Chinese father was named Hong, right? And the Hispanic, the Mexican father was named Javier, and
then you had a white
father was Fred, and you know that kind of thing, right? So
and then
the Black father was like Jaden or something. I forget,
like Terrence or like
Tyrese, I think it was Tyrese. They gave the name. They laid out the whole thing, right? So it was very clear. And the students had equal names that you absolutely knew, like, okay, Sharnisa was like the Black student, and you know, Fabio was, you know, the whole thing, right? So anyway, they send these letters out, and they say, okay, well, you know, if you don't, and they said in the letter, like, hey, my child has certain needs, and I'd really like to have a conversation with you because I want to make sure that my needs of my child are going to be met in your school, right? Well, if you don't respond back, then that's just kind of like, all right, hang on a second, man. Like, why would you respond? And so what they did was, there's a large, we're like at 10,000 different students got the letter for the white family, 10,000 principals got the letter from the white family, 10,000 from the Black family, 10,000 from the Chinese family, and 10,000 from the Mexican family, right? So it's a lot. Like you're not studying the same person, you're studying different people, but the sample is so large that, you know, like you're going to get a sense. And so what they found was that people responded to Black families just as readily as they responded to white families. People there was a 7% increase compared, like Hispanic families compared to white families. White families were 7% more likely to get a response than the Hispanic family, which means that of the 107 letters that got 107 times that white families got a response, Hispanic families only got a response 100 times. And for Chinese families, it was a 22% increase. So for every 122 responses that white people got, Chinese families only got 100 responses. And they should have been 100 to 100. It should be absolutely equal if there's no discrimination, right? But Black families, it basically was the same, right? So for every 100 responses white families got, Black families got 100 responses, right? So anyway, so CTB from Apex, North Carolina is saying, is it now equal? No, it's not now equal. But in some places, in some certain situations, it is. Yeah, for sure. Because I'll guarantee if you go back to 30 years ago or 40 years ago, the Black family there was not an equal response to the Black parents, right? And the response was worse when the school district was really strapped for funds. Like, you don't want, we got, wait, does this mean, we have a Chinese family here. We have this Mexican American family. It's like, wait, does that mean we have to support the language thing? It's like, oh man, and like funds are tight. Like, what's this gonna mean? Like, what do you mean? Do you need how much support do you need? This is the kind of thing, right? It's like, well, that's discrimination. So anyway, I just thought of that. I was going to talk about that in class. I will talk about it later in the semester because I think it's really valuable. It's valuable for my black students in the class to look at Chinese students and be like, oh, hang on a second. Like, do I see you that way too? And the principals, by the way, there was no difference. They didn't know the race of the principals, but it was a cross section of people. So it's like, it's not going to be that it was only the whatever principals that discriminated against. It was a cross section.
Right.
They thought that the researchers were being very thoughtful, and they thought that had no response. Okay.
That's a cool study.
Anyway, what do you think about that?
That's an awesome, I think I wonder what the next step would be. I'm curious to know like what their next experiment would be after that,
And if they had only sent out 100 letters, then you could be like, well, I don't know. Maybe the principals just didn't get around to responding to them.
Right.
So again, each principal only got one letter, and it was either from one of the four families, right?
Right.
But then there was another shift also. The shift was whether they said in the letter that my son or my daughter is going to need a little extra help.
Mm-hmm.
Or they didn't say that,
Right. My question would be, one of my first thoughts before you continue to elaborate on the experiment was like, oh, what if the principal prioritizes different job functions within the role? And then I was like, oh, that'd be interesting to understand a study of like what do principals prioritize that then creates some form of neglect, and then leads to like what do principals even prioritize in terms like they prioritize the community of the school? Are they prioritizing like getting funds? Are they prioritizing like, I don't know, just that's another thing that's making me think about. Like,
that was the definitely funds. When funds were tight, that's when they got the least number of responses, but nonetheless, the Chinese students got the lowest number, right? So we're less likely, you know. And once again, the black students and the white students got the same number, families got the same responses. So even when funds were tight. So the point being that this is the kind of research that, you know, we need to do and we need to know about and we need to be thinking about it, because there are a lot of black principals out there too, man. It's like, hey, like, yeah, what's your take on Asian students? And then, you know, this kind of thing. Like, this is really important.
Yeah.
All right, man. Anyway, I'll talk about that in class. I just didn't get to it last Thursday and I knew I would need a lot of time to. Maybe I could do damn near a whole class on that. I could find a couple different things like that and do it, because it's really important that we see discrimination as a complicated matter, and we get away from the classic lens that we have that discrimination only happens to some people. Like, it happens on the basis of class. Absolutely, man. When the parent shows up to that school, the white parent shows up to the school, and the white parent is showing up to lobby on behalf of their child, and the white parent has never had braces, and the white parent's teeth are crooked, and there's another signal in there somehow. Things are gonna be seen. They're gonna be seen in a certain way. Yeah, doesn't matter, and it does. And whereas not, you know, and again, it's complicated, right? All this stuff is complicated. So, all right, Steven says.
Also, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just thinking about. I wonder if they were controlling for principals that were totally unresponsive.
No, they weren't. No,
because
they weren't. All they could do is get a list, and they didn't do it in every state. It was only 33 states, because they had to be able to get a list of all the principals. They had to get the address of all the principals who they had to be able to get it, and they had to be online. Right. It had to be available. So they could only do this in the states where that information was online.
Okay, because I was thinking, like, what if there's some principals that, like, there's some principals that just aren't sending letters back to any of the students.
No, there are.
But they're still included in the data.
But it wouldn't matter, because the sample is so large that it still is. There's no reason in the world that those principals would be more grouped up more likely to receive a letter from a Chinese American family, you see.
Okay. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the thing is. Yeah.
I guess I was wondering if there's a way to study or measure, like, principal neglect. Like, if a principal is not doing their job at all. And
No, I got you. No, I got you. Yeah. And in this case, it still wouldn't matter. It still is. Yeah. It's still, being Chinese is the biggest.
Yeah. I wasn't arguing that. I was just
but there may be that, like, it may be kind of counterintuitive, right? It may just be like, hey, wait, people have this idea that Asians don't need any assistance, they don't need any help. You got this education thing down, man. You got it all. So it's like, I'm more likely to get this letter from a Chinese person and just be like, you know what? Your kid doesn't really, come on, man, y'all are like killing it, so you don't need that. But even if that's the case, that it still would be in what we would talk about as discriminatory, you know, because it's like, well, that's not really true.
And if that was the case, if you have a neglectful principal, then how do you have mediation? Like, if you have I'm just thinking on the side of someone who's not overseeing, then how do you mediate when there is discrimination or things happening?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's all right. Missing slide 5. So Steven says, how do we stop extremists attacking religious communities like today, the attack on the Manchester synagogue? Man, we stop having our leaders speak in extremist languages or extremist term, using extremism in their speech and their talk, and we try to find that extremism among all leaders, including religious leaders, and we just try to put a stop to it, man. Like, come on, Like you just got to put a stop to it. Like in our churches and our synagogues and our mosques, just like enough, man. I mean, I don't know how we can't police that, but we do the best we can a little bit, but God. Okay. Jennifer said, how do we talk about 6? How do we talk about race relations without making it into an us versus them narrative? Oh man, we don't. We don't, man. We just, I try to, well, I don't know. Maybe do I do that?
I was gonna say, don't you? I mean,
I
isn't
don't
it
think I make
about
it us
making
versus
it?
them.
Yeah, you don't. I don't you make it about positioning, right? And
Yeah.
like sociological positioning and where they stand, and that
Yeah.
doesn't really turn it into an us versus them. That turns it into, well, this is
Yeah.
my position, and
That's right. No, you do. And by the way, I just saw in the chat, I just looked over and I saw Des Moines is saying that like we discriminate daily. Yeah. Yep, we do. We're always, and we said this in the class the other day. It's like, man, we're just every minute I'm discriminating. I'm like kind of assessing something. We just taking a walk and I'm like, that person's got their dog. Wait, I want to pass the dog. Does that person look like they understand the dog? It's like I want to have a positive encounter with this dog. So in my mind, I mean, do they look like they understand dogs, or do they?
yeah.
And I don't even know what I'm looking for.
I wonder.
But
I wonder what the difference between snap judgment and discrimination, or if they're the
yeah,
same thing.
well, yeah, that's a good. I don't know, huh? Yeah, maybe snap judgment is what I'm doing. Discrimination, when we think about it sociologically, it's when we take those snap judgments and we start to organize them on the basis of these group belongings that do or do not. Like in the case of a dog, it's like, well, it wouldn't matter what the race is of the people, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. Like I'm just making this snap judgment very quickly.
Right.
Maybe
So it's like accumulation of
yeah.
snap judgments, or to
Yeah.
then and then that gets organized into.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, okay, Just Me from the Tar Heel State said, why do most biracial people refer to themselves, if they're black in something, refer to themselves not as black, but I mean, you're saying that, but why do people refer to themselves as their minority self, more like Elijah, so you're white and black.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many people who are white and black can call themselves black how many people do you meet that call themselves white?
Do I meet that call themselves white, that are mixed, that are
Yeah,
mixed?
like you. Yeah, just like you.
Yeah. Most people would identify as mixed, or it's so funny. Laura and I had this conversation too. It's such a deep combo, like uh interpersonally, like that people have. But most people go by mixed that I meet
So
that
you're
are
gonna go by mixed. What if you
even more than me, that are like half and half, because I'm
do you think
less.
that's more your generation more is increasingly people are taking ownership of the mixed race category?
Man, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
But how many
mean-
people, but how common is it though, really, because historically it's been quite common for me that somebody like you would be more likely, first thing, it would be mixed, secondly, black, and thirdly, white. But black's always going to come ahead of white. You wouldn't call yourself white unless you were really, really looked white and kind of were white and were only like maybe a quarter or something or whatever.
Well, yeah, well, that is me. I am a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
But-
you're quarter white,
Quarter black.
quarter black. So you would be, if you were half black, would you be?
My dad's half black. Mhm.
If you were though, would you be more inclined to call yourself black, or would you still
Probably
say
because I look more black.
you would look? You think
And-
you would look if you look more black? You would.
Mhm. Yeah. And so it doesn't feel right because I'm white. I am white, like even though I have black in me and I have like a little bit of, I think, the genes of my black genes are in me enough where like my curly hair, like some features where some people say they can tell. But for
Yeah.
the most part, people would think I'm Lebanese, or some people have thought I'm Spanish, or, you know, they'll think I'm something else, but they usually won't think I'm black unless it's somebody who is black that's like, I can see a certain feature.
Yeah.
They've done
Like,
that.
so, for example, the one woman yesterday she identified as Filipina. Well, she didn't yesterday, but the other day I talked to her and I asked her, I'm like, hey, so wait, what's your background? She said, oh, I'm Filipina. Well, she's half Filipina, right? But when when she was on the table, she didn't identify as Filipina. She said, you know, I'm white. My mom's from the Philippines. Or my dad, I don't remember which one it was, but I'm like, okay. Her dad's from the Philippines. So, but that would be kind of a case oftentimes. But in my class, it's kind of common that students who are half white and half something else are kind of often coming of age in themselves to understand that something else, whatever it is. And so they will more identify with that because they're kind of trying to feel that out more so.
Yeah, and also like at least for me, I remember I wanted people to know that, especially like those that were black, you know, especially when I was like younger and growing up, because I felt like that would like humanize me as like a part of like, you know, like I could like I have a past to kind of be a part of your group, or because I'm like you in a way. And I'm like, you know, like
Yeah.
this is what I would do so I could feel like I belonged with them, or they could feel like you know, like he's valid. You know.
Yeah.
And that's what would happen though. They'd be like, oh yeah, Elijah's got black in him, you know, like
a black Elijah. Yeah, man. All right, listen,
it's
we got to
weird,
finish up here.
but
So let me do a couple things. Josiah asked, how do we stop this descent into mainstreaming anti-Semitism? Yeah, we're going to die, man. It's like it's a biblical level question right there. We are definitely going to we've talked about anti-Semitism a lot as the longest hatred, and we're going to do a class this semester on on anti-Semitism and in Gaza and Israel and so on. So stay tuned on that. John Paul from Liverpool says MLK spoke of the content of one's character, not the color of the skin. Why do you think as time goes on, the Western world has become more race focused? I think it's because more people are kind of, well, we've always been race focused, but I just think that with me, we just talk about it more. But man, if I go back to the 50s and 60s, certainly here in the US or in Latin America, anywhere, it's like people are pretty focused on race. I think that we're just having it as a bigger conversation right now. Right now in particular. Yeah. Okay. Diana from Art Den from Wisconsin. Diana Art Den. Can you please talk about discrimination against people with disabilities? Oh man. I have mosaic Down syndrome. People judge me very harshly. Yeah, man. We did a class.
I remember that last year.
Spring or last fall
I think
on
it was last spring.
disability. Yeah. We did a class on that. Yeah. I actually, when I do this disabilities thing, when I do the study, when we talk about the study that I was just talking about with the principles, maybe I could do something with disabilities too. I'm gonna Diana Art Den, I'm gonna hold that. Yeah, that's cool. All right, maybe we'll thanks for asking. Cecil X says, does wealth have to do with how hard someone's worked? Sometimes it does. Does it come from how one manages money? Sometimes it does. How is wealth a measure of discrimination? It's definitely all of those things. If you don't work hard, I mean, you might accumulate wealth if someone gives it to you, or if you get really lucky, like you play the lottery and you hit the scratch off or something. I don't know, but it's like for most of human history and for most human beings, hard work, wealth is going to be rooted in family connections, where who you're born, where you're born, and with whom, and hard work. So like I know a lot of really, really, really hardworking people down in Haiti, man, who are not wealthy and never will be wealthy, and they work a hell lot harder than I ever will, and they're smart and they're insightful, and they do all sorts of amazing things to generate wealth and so on, and they're never going to be wealthy, man. So because they're in Haiti, and that's just how it is. So it also depends on a lot of things, and it depends on how you manage money, right? Like my wife and I have lived incredibly frugal, man. We ate rice and beans for years and years and years, and we didn't spend money, and we just stashed it away and invested it. And so, okay, now we live a different life, but we didn't do that. There were other people just like us who just blew through their money, and they didn't do that. And so, okay, you live with. So wealth is a measure of discrimination. It's not a measure. What the measure is, that the idea is that human beings, there's not one group of people that works harder than any other group of people. Everybody works hard. There's no, there are thoughts about some groups. Some people are lazy and some are more industrious and that kind of thing. But my experience of the world is everybody works. No, there's no one group that's more or less a hard worker. And so therefore, when we see these immense differences in wealth, it's got to be something else. So the same number of Black people and brown people and white people, the same percentage in the population and Asian people are hard working and lazy. That's how those things are connected. I agree that there was discrimination in the past, but isn't there a difference between 20, 30, 40, 100? Yeah, there's definitely a difference. Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah. We're not.
Would you?
We're not in the same boat.
I just thought of a question about, would you say there's a correlation between like those, like evaluating people that are impoverished, all races, those that are either like South Asian, East Asian, African American, white American, and assessing the subculture that they create within the home, like correlates to like how successful like their children might be, or if they're all in poverty, but then measuring like the in-home cultures that they create.
So here's a way you can see that. Like when we look at poor white people, basically the same number of poor white people are able to overcome their poverty today, right? Are able to overcome their poverty as poor Black people, poor Hispanic people, poor Native Americans, poor Asian, poor whatever. It's like the same number are able to, if we just look at the poor community, right? You're not going to see white people surging ahead or Black people surging ahead or whatever. You're going to see basically the same number, because today things are different, right? And so then it becomes, well, why is it that we see so much? Why is wealth so different in these populations? Well, this is that historical discrimination. We talked about it in discrimination class. When one group is starting with so much more, then they're going to end up with so much more.
Right.
So it's like, so anyway, you have to sort of break that cycle somehow.
Right. I guess I was originally thinking about like a South Asian culture. How like the parents place so much value, or an East Asian culture plays so much value on like education and like all these things. Like just, I don't know, for all my friends that I've had growing up that were South Asian or East Asian, just the in-home family structure was just so focused on certain things that, like, I wonder, even if they were in poverty, because the values that were instilled in like the discipline and the structure at such a early. I was like
Yeah, but
wondering,
no,
like,
listen,
would that make
no,
a
but
difference?
here's the thing.
Curious.
Those
Yeah.
are also South Asians who were here, right? There are a lot of lazies, Indians and
Right. Yeah.
Koreans and Chinese and Mexicans. There are lots of lazy people. Irish, the lazy Irish, the lazy. They're all back in their countries, man. You know, the people that pick up their lives and they go somewhere else because they want to make it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the
specific population coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why like Nigerians come here and they're like, man, you know what it took me to get here as a Nigerian? Let's just say, I say this because I was just talking to a Nigerian recently. It's like, you know what it took for us to get here? It's like, what are you complaining about, man? Like, come on, like, fuck. You know, so that's the thing, man. Yeah, but the people that didn't do that, they're back in Nigeria, right? Or they didn't do what they didn't get a lucky break to come here. They still would, they would. And they would be industrious and hardworking and so on. So anyway, yeah, there are lots of lazy South Asians, so they're just not. Yeah. All right, man. Jeff, I think and Elijah, but I think we got to roll, man. I got to roll. It's been over 2 hours in sitting here, man.
Yeah, I did want to give another shout out to Scott Kushner because the tier list says at the end of office hours, we'll always give shout outs to our tier 2 and 3. So again, a big shout out to Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And
really
to all of our
appreciate
tier 1 as well.
All right. Listen, man, Jeff, thanks for
What's class tomorrow? Let's give them a preview and then we'll leave.
You know what? I don't know what class is tomorrow. I haven't thought about it. And yeah, I don't know. God, I was thinking that maybe today I would come up with something. I feel like
this could be
something that's more international.
I was gonna say it could be the elder conversation.
Yeah, we had that. Damn. Yeah, maybe we'll do that one. That was on my list. Yeah, I have could also be the immigration one. Yeah, that's kind of it might be that one just to like go with that. I got a bunch of people who want to do that. Yeah, I'll have to talk to Mr. Rishi. All right, listen, man. Thanks, everybody. Be well. We will see what happens. Thanks, Elijah. Thanks, Jeff, for
thank you, Dr. Sam.
All together. Yeah, appreciate it. All right. See you later.